This video covers mixing bass. So here you'll see a song called Riding by Yourself by Ron Kempton, one of my top students. And this is a MIDI bass. That's a MIDI editor window you're looking at there. For those of you who don't know what MIDI is, it's Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And the vertical lines on the bottom show the velocity, or how hard each note was played, because it was played with a keyboard actually, with a virtual instrument. Okay, so you'll see it was inconsistently played. There's different velocities there. You can listen to it here. Those kind of disappear, those notes. Little bass harmony there, which I like that style, so I wrote that in there. So this track that he gave me was a guitar and vocal, and a demo kind of drum idea, and I'm building the rest of the track. So look at the vertical lines in the bottom now. We even them out so the velocities are the same. Sounds much more consistent, and that's very important for the low end when you're mixing bass. So mixing is not just adjusting levels of, and adding EQ and adding some reverb or different plugins. It's also going in and looking at the performance and adjusting the performance. In this case, as we said, the velocity. So that's the first thing we've done. And now we're listening to the bass in the mix. It's important to use what I call composite perception and listen to the full mix as much as possible. Don't solo things too much. It's not going to tell you their relationship to everything else. Okay, so as I listened through this, I actually heard some arrangement choices that I think need to be made. But we're going to listen to the rest of the song so you become familiar. And this is how I work. I find that those who are successful with music licensing get an idea of the big picture, in this case the big picture of this song. So I just evened out all those vertical lines, the velocity, and now I want to hear, I'm listening as the song is playing, I'm listening very carefully to the flow of the song, how each section flows into the other. And what I'm listening to are the notes themselves. Do they speak? When they go to the upper register, it does get a little thin when they go up high, but do I like that? And when I say do I like that, what I mean is, how does it affect me emotionally? And that's the most important thing to listen for, is basically feel what you're listening to emotionally. We can be so technical about what we do and forget that this is an art. So when I'm listening to this, I kind of picture myself as a bass player with one of those big basses, or someone else like that. I picture it and picture the band performing and whatever visual comes into my mind. But I'm getting into the emotion of the track. And that's important, because if something throws you off emotionally, then you go in and you fix it. So let's listen to it for a little bit here.
Some know love that's touched with grace, some are left alone. Left alone. It's time I call the last round. There's not much more to tell. I've told you all that I know. There's no potion I can sell. It's a long way to the moon, my
The finished product as we move forward will include a little bit of orchestration, But this is the basic foundation. The acoustic guitar, which is really nicely played by Ron Kempton. And a great song, by the way. He's a very good songwriter. And he sent me these stem files for me to mix, the guitar and a little drum thing which I'm changing, and the vocal. And we're adding this bass. So this bass wasn't there at all to begin with. And this end will have a little bit of orchestration on it. All right, so that's a flow of the song. And when I was saying, people that are successful, they listen to the flow, what I mean is that basically not to get hung up too much on looping small sections for hours at a time. You'll lose sight of your song as a whole and the perspective on the whole song. And you might make a little loop sound great, and it may sound crap when you play it with the whole song. Like it doesn't flow at all. All right, so here's the virtual instrument. It's called an upright bass. It's a Halion Sonic, which is a virtual instrument that comes with Cubase. It's actually very nice. I mean, I've used this and I've had people say, "Wow, you're a great bass player." And I guess you could say I am, but without a bass. And I'm playing it on the keyboard right now, just so you can hear this instrument. It's nice. Okay, here's the edit window for this track. And I'm just playing so you can see how this is configured. There's a little bit, see that? This is a Puigchild 670 stereo plugin. You'll see when I turn it on and play a note, there's this little low end thing going on. I see that, but I've never had a problem with that in the mix. It's not something that has created a problem for me. So here's the Puigchild 670 stereo plugin. Now, this is actually a tool that I refer to, with my students, kind of like a chainsaw. I say, if you're going to knock a wall down and you're going to take a butter knife, to this wall to knock it down, it's going to take you a long time. And you may not get as good a product, but if you have a chainsaw, you can get through that thing fast and move on to your next job. This is what I call a chainsaw plugin. It's just so workable. And it's very rare. Here I'm circling the mid frequencies there. Mid frequencies in bass are very important because when you play through laptops and smaller speakers, you may not hear your bass at all unless you really work with the mid frequencies. Anyway, this compressor is a great, go-to compressor, and it's very few, plugins that I'll say this is something worth looking into. Okay, so there's two notes there. Listen to this, and they don't fit well in the chord. If you know anything about music theory, this is voicings that we're talking about here, and it sounded like it went to like the third or the fifth rather than the root. See there, it's on the root. Yeah, fifth. So it was at a B flat, and that's an F rather than a B flat. And I don't like the way it goes to the fifth. Fifth's not a good thing to play in a bass when you're on a root. Some more here. Yeah, these F's over here, I'm going to bring those down. You'll hear this. And this is part of mixing. This is part of mixing. We're kind of arranging as we go. But the arrangement has everything to do with your mix. I can't teach you love. So, here, listen to those with the F. It just took it out of the flavor of the song. It almost made it sound like My Margaritaville or something. So since we're using arrangement as a tool here, you'll see I'm going to try to mute these upper harmony notes. I just want to know if it's maybe too much. Listen to it here. I mean, I'm a huge fan of harmonies in bass where it works. So let's hear that with the full track.
Love is a stranger, everyone sees as special to themselves.
It's nice. It definitely works. Now I'm trying to figure out.
Love is a stranger, everyone sees as special.
Which one I like better. And this is such a sparse arrangement. It's just drums and guitar and bass that this actually feels a little bit too sparse right there with just the bass. So I like the upper harmony there. Listen to it.
Love is a stranger, everyone sees as special to themselves.
Good. And since bass is the foundation, you know, the melody lead line, whether it's vocal or instrumental, and the bass are really usually the big foundations of your track. So let's listen to it here. Here again is the Puigchild 670. I'll show you what it sounds like without it. Okay, I'm turning it off, and it boosts the volume quite a bit, so we're going to have to pull it up without it. Listen to it now. Not nearly as much body and meat and thickness and warmth. Now listen to it with the compressor on. If you have subwoofers at home and you're listening to this, you'll really feel a difference. But even if you don't, you'll feel a difference. That's what I like about this thing. It makes a big difference on small laptop speakers, computer speakers, studio speakers. Okay, we'll listen to it with the track now.
Everyone sees as special to themselves.
All right, we're going to take a look here. In MIDI, there's something you can do. There's a lot you can do, actually. This is pitch bend. All right, and you'll see I've written in some automation there. Do-doom, bo-doom. So when the ear hears that as the first note, see, I'll take it away, and let's hear the difference. To me, it sounds more mechanical. It actually sounds a little bit more kind of computerized. See, that note is solo. It's the first thing you hear in the song. When I hear it with the pitch bend, I get immediately the picture of a bass player and just a nice emotional feeling immediately from the first note. And that's important in licensing, the very first notes you play. Think about it. The person that you're giving this to probably has gotten who knows how many songs that day that they're getting through. They're probably behind. They're listening. The first few notes are so important. Now, here's one thing I want to teach you. You know, this is the music production fundamentals, and we went over this already, but look at how this particular individual track is totally clipping. The EQ looks crazy. This thing looks like it's like a disaster, and that's how people are usually taught. Now, here's how I teach, and here's one of the reasons why I've got the track record I do. I use my ears, not my eyes, especially with individual tracks. We'll go over this more, but you can't do that so much with the stereo bus out, with your main stereo out track. But with your individual tracks here, use your ears, okay? They're built, digital audio workstations are built so that you can kind of crank away. Like, look at this, see that's clipping? It should be distorting, right? Like, you can't put so much lows on EQ. You can't turn that thing up. You can't. Yeah, but you want to know something? Yes, you can. I just get it to sound really good and emotional. And if lights are flashing and this looks weird and that looks like wrong, I don't care. If it sounds fantastic, then it sounds fantastic. It's like Duke Ellington said, if it sounds good, it is good. All right, now I'm looking at the relationship between bass and drums here a little bit. So, if you just close your eyes and don't look at that, which is how I mix, it sounds awesome. Individual tracks use floating point technology, which means you can spike them. See, there's red. So look at the red. Upper orchestra stem, percussion drums, groove agent, kick. They're red. Up there, stereo bus out is a stereo bus out that I created from an internal track. But if you look to the upper right hand of this screen, the very upper right, there is a meter that's about halfway up the meter there. That's the true stereo bus out. And that's the one that you should watch, and you don't need to keep your eye on it so much. So, what happens is when people aren't taught correctly, all they'll do is they'll just make sure there's no red. And it puts them in a state of kind of anxiety about, red lights and distortion, which isn't happening. Like, listen very carefully.
I can't teach you love to breathe.
And we're talking about gain staging, okay, with the bass now. And gain staging is managing the levels of your individual faders and the stereo bus out. But really, the truth about gain staging is it's just about making sure your track sounds good and that the stereo bus out fader is safe and safely away from the red. Okay, now I'm going to put a compressor before that Puigchild because I'm going to do something here, which is I'm using this compressor for one purpose, and that is using it as a side chain. Now right here, this is the send return. See send return, where you can put plugins and stuff. Well, you can also send your signal to a side chain. I can slide this back and forth and send the signal from the kick drum into this compressor, and you'll see right here where I'm circling, there will be a light that will go downwards. See that going downwards there? That's pushing down the volume of whatever it's compressing. In this case, the bass. And the reason is, I felt it was a little bit muddy when the kick drum and the bass were hitting on the downbeat. And I want kind of an organic thing, like as if the musicians are right there in the room. And if an upright bass player were playing and somebody were playing drums, but tasty, I'd hear and feel that kick. And it was getting a little gobbled up by the bass, by the bass guitar. So we're going to take a closer listen to this so you can see how this sidechain compressing works. What it does is it gets one sound to duck under another one. So there's the kick and the bass. So listen. See how clear the kick drum comes through? Now, as I bring that down, it muddies up a little bit for me. I want a little more clarity. And you'll see it makes a difference in the overall mix. And what you do now, once you have your sidechain set up, you can adjust. Like here's release, how fast this compressor is going to release, how fast it's going to let up after pushing down the volume. See, that's a little bit too much. It's like pumping. So I'm going to pull it down all the way and just slowly adjust it. Listen to the kick drum and the bass guitar.
I can't teach you love's degree or help you find yourself.
Looking for a good balance between the two.
Love is a stranger everyone sees as special to themselves.
That's pretty nice. See, this allows you to not have to deal with EQ. Leave both things EQ'd the way they are because maybe you love the way they're both EQ'd. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And you can just get one sound to make the other one duck the moment it hits. Now here's what I was talking about gain staging. Remember all the red, the red, the red? Here's the stereo bus out. It's about halfway up. And there's no distortion. The fact that it's halfway up like that, I can be relaxed and just enjoy myself and not worry that the level is like up here. I can relax with that red. See? I mean, it's a funny thing. It's counterintuitive, but that's what I'm teaching you. And if you go into like, look at some hit records, you'll see red all over the place on the individual tracks because, engineers have either figured it out or they know, about floating point technology. But look at the gain staging, the level of the stereo bus out, the big one on the right. It's about halfway up the meter. And, this is something I'm repeating throughout this course, but it's actually vital, especially for music licensing, because you want to be relaxed and you want to be confident and you want to have your attention on emotions of the music. And this is the thing that supervisors, publishers relate to. They get so many songs, and your production has to sound great. I mean, otherwise they'll just pass, period. But even if your production sounds great, you want it to be moving yourself and the listener emotionally. And if you keep that gain staging, that level of the stereo bus out halfway up, you yourself will be in a good mood and be able to really get into the emotions of what you're doing. So here's that side chain. Here's the kick drum pushing that bass guitar down just a little bit. Now, there's the kick drum, it's a MIDI kick drum. Here's another way to sidechain I'm going to show you. Now see the left and right locators there? I'm going to actually export this MIDI kick drum, calling it kick bounce. I'm bouncing it down back into an audio track, a mono, because it's a kick, so I want it mono. So now, there we go. So now we have a new audio track. It's not MIDI anymore. It's an audio track, as if we recorded it from an actual bass drum with a microphone. It's an audio track. And those are two things that are your tools when it comes to tracks. You have audio tracks and MIDI tracks. The vocal is like audio. It's recorded with a microphone. It's naturally recorded. The guitar, audio track. The bass is a MIDI track. It's an artificial inside the computer track. And the kick drum was also MIDI. And we've made an audio track out of that MIDI track. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off. Okay, we had this before. We had it routed through the send return, remember? And we're going to turn that off. This kick track instead of it right here, kick to SC means kick to sidechain. I've actually got it routed not to the speakers. You won't even hear it. So it's called a ghost kick track. I'm routing that kick track, kick to SC, straight to the compressor. Now, what does this do? How does this help? This is a little different than the other way where we just did a send return. Here's that compressor. Again, same compressor. Now, as I turn this, see, we're looking there, look for the light coming down. As I turn the volume of this up, watch. See that bar coming down right there? Right there, where my cursor is. Okay, and as I adjust the volume of the kick drum higher, that pushes down lower. It's actually turning the volume down of the bass, just like we did before by sliding that bar across. Now we can make adjustments to this ghost kick track, and we can make extreme, exaggerated adjustments. And here's what I discovered. Watch this. You could take the EQ in that ghost kick track, and depending on where you lift the EQ, that's the part of the bass that's going to be pushed down. It's called attenuated or ducked. So if you bring up the low end like this, the low end of the bass guitar will go down every time the kick hits. If you lift it up the high end, then the high end of the bass guitar would go down, or anything. So this is an incredible tool right here. You can really sculpt and adjust what part of something you want ducked. Okay? So here's the kick playing, plus that go. Now turn that off, and there's no side chaining. Now it's on. Now you can adjust the volume here and adjust how much you want that thing to duck out of the way or not. And then if you move the EQ around, you can adjust what part of it do you want ducked. The very, very low end, the high end, the mids. So, I mean, this is, it's cool to watch this and learn this, but as part of the music production fundamentals, what I want you to do is I want you to experiment with this. Set up side chaining different things to different things. Like here we have a kick to a bass. There's a lot of times I'll take a vocal and have it sidechain a guitar part because it's just competing. It's competing too much with the guitar, and you try to fool around with the EQ and the levels, and they're both fighting each other. But wouldn't it be nice if you had your vocal, every time your vocal sang, it actually caused the guitar track to duck underneath it so the vocals were nice and clear. And when the vocals stopped, the guitars came back up. Or here I am now, I'm A-Bing, so I'm comparing with the Cardigans. Now what's really important with A-Bing is to make sure that you have the volume similar, so you have apples and apples. Turning it up a little bit there. I mean, in a way, it's a very different kind of a track, but there are certain things I was listening for, and I'm very familiar with that track. And I'll say this in other parts of the course also, but they all bear repeating, and that is, when you're A-Bing, you're comparing. You're not always just trying to make it sound exactly like this. The reason I'm comparing with this track is for that song, the Cardigans, hear how bright and breathy it is? I, on purpose, wanted to stay away from that sound. So that's one of the reasons I'm A-Bing with this track, is actually to make sure that I don't go in a certain direction. So you might have heard of A-B to try to match things. Yeah, that's good. And I do it all the time. But in this case, I was A-Bing to stay away from a certain sound, that bright, kind of hissy, breathy sound. I wanted more warmth and organic feel from this track. So to summarize bass, you first want to make sure, in this case I had it because I was the one that performed it and quantized it, you want to make sure that the rhythm is good on the bass. The next thing is you want to make sure that the volume of the bass notes, one to the other, as it flows through the song, is consistent and emotionally pleasing. You can feel it. Bass is something that vibrates, it resonates. So you want to make sure of that. And then the next thing is the arrangement, because bass is so critical. You want to make sure the arrangement and the notes that are playing fit into the chords and flow and are interesting. Like I even used some harmony you saw there on the bass. Then the next thing is the relationship to other things in the mix. In this case, we looked at kick drum and everything else. And then A-Bing, listening to other tracks with it. So those are key things for the bass track for licensing, and I hope that helped. And we're going to move on now to guitars.